recording with Jasper. So we're live now. So what is up, everyone? Scott Brent here, coming and live streaming on the High School and Beyond podcast. And like I shared earlier before, just to give a heads up with the stream here, if you're watching this and it's on Facebook, because I don't think YouTube gives the option to share, and then Twitch, I know we're on Twitch right now, but if you have the option to share this on your page, share it. There's a little button that says share, and then you can start a watch party and whatnot. So that's the only way when it comes to podcasting and live streaming to get the information out. So, but I do have the pleasure of having Dr. G on tonight. We were sitting down and talking yesterday and just talking about some different things. And then towards the end, before I had to leave to go record the other podcast with Miriam Wilson, Dr. G had talked about coming on, sharing his perspective, because that's one of the things when it comes to the holistic career and college planning piece is having other people share their experience, so people don't look at me like I'm just talking to talk, because there's a lot of information. And I've had parents get mad at me before. I had somebody I was talking to, and I was like, you know what, college isn't for everybody. And the mother got mad at me. She's like, oh, so you're saying my kid's not meant to go to college? I was like, I didn't say that. No, I was just saying that college isn't for everybody. And I don't know your perspective on that when I bring that up, Dr. G, but I'll have you just share your backstory and kind of what you went through and where you're at now, and go from there. And then, of course, we'll end it with the pod decks. I've got that. That's a good one there. So
love the pod decks.
Yep. So you're good. Go ahead and jump on and share away.
Cool. So I completely agree. College isn't for everybody. And college was for me though, but I guess let me go back, because I kind of have a different story. So a lot of people are looking to go into college. They're coming fresh out of high school. But I dropped out of high school, and I ran away from home when I was 16 and dropped out of high school. I was out probably my sophomore and junior year. I was running the streets and being a stupid kid. But eventually I got talked back into by my dad to go and do homeschool. And then back in those days, homeschool was completely different from what it was or what it is today, right? So you had to find colleges that would accept a homeschool diploma. So, and that was few and far between. So I had to take an interesting approach. So when I finally decided to go back to school, I completed my junior and senior year in 1 year through homeschooling. But then I ran into this issue of I couldn't find colleges that would take that diploma. So I was listening to Jasper, the last Jasper Axelrod, the last time you were running this, and she was talking about community colleges. And that was the only way. I had to go through community college to get myself just in a position to go to a 4-year college. And so that, my whole college journey was so different. I didn't actually go to a 4-year college. I went to a community college. I was trying to get a degree in architecture, and I was living with my dad. He got stationed in Korea, and then I moved back to Colorado Springs and decided to go to tech school. So I went completely out of the 4-year thing. I was like, because I needed a job. I needed something to kind of make money. And so I went to tech school, or I guess what they call vocational school, but more in a technology aspect, to do architectural and structural drafting. And so my idea at that point was, I'll get this 2-year degree, at least try to get into the field, and then see if I can get under an architect. And then, you can work then, I don't know if it's still the same now, you can work so many years under an architect, and then you could go get your certifications and all that kind of. So you didn't necessarily have to go to college that way.
Okay.
So did that, and then and got out of tech school, got a job, was working for local home builders, and 11 years in architecture, and the housing market crashed. So I no longer had a job in architecture. So what was interesting then, though, is that in my positions, I really started getting into the CAD programs, and so trying to customize them and do custom commands that would kind of make our jobs a little bit easier. So I really loved the programming aspect, and and it was, when you do that, the programming wasn't so deep. It was just more like scripting language at that point. But so when the housing market crashed, I just made this bold decision to jump ship, pivot, and go in a completely different direction. And I went to get a bachelor's in computer science, and that kind of is where my real college aspect began. But again, I never went to a 4-year college, right? And so this is where I was excited to kind of share on your podcast, because a lot of people are thinking 4-year colleges and this and that. And, University of Phoenix, and there's a place here in Colorado Springs, Colorado Tech. So that's where I got my degrees from. I got my bachelor's from University of Phoenix, and then I went back for my master's at Colorado Technical University. And then I went for my doctorate at Colorado Technical University. So there were still technical universities, and it's just a different avenue that I don't, not a lot of people are forced. I was forced into it, because by the time I went for my bachelor's or master's, I was old, right? I'm not going to some 4-year thing where college where kids are kids, and here I am, this grown man with kids of my own. So I had to go on a different route, but the route worked. And college was for me. It really was. But so I guess here's the thing, though. It took me actually I told myself that if I was going to go back to college, and I said this, when my dad convinced me to go back to high school, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to go all the way. I'm going to get my doctorate. And it was more just to prove to myself that was something that I could complete. Just, it was more of a personal thing, and not like something that I had to do because I wanted to make billions of dollars with a doctorate. I did, once I started getting into the doctorate, decide that I wanted to teach, because going through the process that I went through, I felt like I had this different perspective. And all these different instructors that I had, that some didn't care, some did care. You really get to go through all these situations and say, what is a good instructor, and how do they care about you and your scholastic career, and then your career afterwards. And I started just picking those things apart and saying, I feel like I could really help people go through the scholastic process. And so when I was going through my doctorate, that really was this drive, was I wanted to teach. And so here's where it's even more interesting. So now I have a doctorate in computer science, and I don't exactly utilize my degree. So I do own a web development company, and so in that sense, yes, I do. So I am, coding in, with PHP, and then there's HTML and all those other aspects. So I am utilizing it in that way. But I have yet to get a teaching job, and which is still a big thing for me. I still want to do, but when it comes to getting into those types of careers, a lot of times you just have to know the right people, and I just don't know the right people. And I've applied to jobs for the school that I graduated from, so I have their degree that they gave me, and they don't want to hire me.
That's a crazy perspective when you really think about it. It's like, okay, you guys invested into my education, and I want to come back and return that investment that you gave me, but they don't want to hire you. And so that's a unique thing when you really think about it and look at it. And so when you look at both the engineering aspects and then the computer science piece, how quickly does it occur where things are changing? I think computer science is probably a quicker career field, that things are constantly changing, updating. And then when you're going through college to get your degree in computer science, what they're teaching you may be like two or 3 years old. and you have a lot of updated information that isn't being taught right away because you got to go through all the book updates and whatnot. But when it comes to engineering, how quickly does that field change? Is there a lot of different technicalities that kind of come up and you have the foundation, but then once you get out into the actual real world with the degree knowledge that you receive, how much of it is matching up?
So for the engineering, so I worked strictly as a drafts person, right? So I basically was just taking schematic drawings and from the in-house architect or the design supervisor or whatever it was at that point, and taking those drawings and then making them into construction documents. So my whole thing really was residential drafting. So I would get house plans, just these schematics, and then put them into a plan that was a buildable plan. And so from that aspect, not a whole lot changed, right? But I can tell you though, because the home builder that we worked with, very big on making sure that all aspects of the plans were engineered. So I had to deal with a lot of engineers, structural engineers, electrical engineers, and HVACs and those types of systems, those engineers. And so by dealing with them, things changed a lot. And it maybe not necessarily through the engineering aspect, but through requirements, through building codes. So at the time when I was drafting, there was the regional building department was going through a huge update trying to get to these national building codes, right? So those change all the time. So you're constantly taking something to an engineer thinking that, I got this based off of what we did last time. Like, no, because regional really wants to see this now, so I have to include this. And so those type of things were really changing. I mean, as far as the math and all that stuff that goes with engineering, I don't know. I couldn't really talk to that on how quickly that changed. But as far as just the drafting aspect, you constantly were having to, adjust to what the building codes and things were going at that time. I think that was probably more of the changes that in at least in the residential housing industry was happening. Commercial is a completely different animal. It's a completely different animal, right? There's more at stake there than just a single family, So, but yeah, and as far as drafting goes, though, the main change then is whatever type of tool you're using, right? So the CAD programs change every year, and they do updates with their software. But then again, at that point in time, there was the building information model. When I was doing that was in its infancy. So the CAD software was trying to figure out how to, I guess just for layman's terms, the building information models, like you're taking this plan, and this plan digitally has every component that's in that building. So like what type of pipes are being used, what your HVAC system, what is the furnace, what is the model number? It has everything in that. So when you can go in that, you know what is in this building. If something breaks, you have all the data, right? It's just right there. And so, but that, and now, and like I haven't been in that industry in a while, but I'm sure it's like off the charts now. The things that you can do with 3D modeling is probably pretty insane. But so there was a big shift going on with just that aspect, and then engineers and drafters and all of us, because they're all trying to, do this collaborative effort of making these plans be this 3D model. So that was an interesting shift for us. And but with technology, so with the computer science piece, you got to look at that too. So ask him the computer science and all these applications that people are using, so that is shifting quickly, right? Because like you were saying, computer science, it just changes. I mean, it's hard for people to kind of keep up with that. So the same thing happens with the engineering. Like they have to keep up with the software that they're trying to utilize as well, not just the regional building codes. So there's all these learning curves that happen.
Oh, okay.
So that was an interesting piece. That answer your question?
Yeah. No, it's one of those things that ultimately I look at it too, potentially where somebody could go through a community college and get the basic foundation and then go out into that career field. And then they start really picking up the knowledge piece. They start picking up the experience piece, which is the most vital thing. But that's also why individuals are in school. If they go that route, I highly suggest trying to find unpaid internships or anything of that nature that allows you to pick up that experience that you can combine with what's being taught in the classroom to what's actually happening in the career field and matching that up and bringing it together. But I think a lot of times people look and they hear the idea of unpaid internship and they're like, I don't want to do that because I want to make money. But I'm like, in the long term, if you have it where you're looking at that experience is going to pay off for you in the long term instead of just this quick, let me work in the restaurant industry, let me be a waiter, anything of that nature. And then we do have George Davalos that came on. He's saying, hello, gentlemen. So what's up, George? I know this is probably really with what you do within your career, George. This kind of fits very well with kind of what we're talking about, because I know you've got some things in regards to the construction piece, and you're doing the consultant piece from the last time that we had talked and whatnot. But ultimately, like we were talking, I think people really have to look at the opportunity to go and take those internships on. And that's something that I've talked to business owners too. I'm like, ultimately, when I'm talking to these students, you could potentially have an unpaid intern come in, work with you. You can see how they work as an individual. And then if they're a great fit for your company, you could potentially bring them on as a part-time employee, and you've already done the vetting. And so if they're going the unpaid intern route, you don't have to worry about paying them. You're giving them that experience. But if they don't fit your company, you're not losing money potentially because you're not having to pay them. So I don't know what your outlook on that when it comes to thinking outside the box, because I'll think some crazy stuff and bring it.
It's not that crazy. And so I was actually fortunate enough to find a company that was willing to do an unpaid internship. So I actually did it. I was not paid, but the value of what came out of that, and so that was with web development. But I can take this in two avenues. So if we just go back to the engineering, the structural drafting, and all that. So when I coming out of that tech school, my first job, they hired me. Literally, they hired me because I knew what the difference between nominal lumber sizes and actual lumber sizes. And they said, as long as you know that, I can teach you the rest. And so they didn't care what I learned in college. They really didn't. They just, can you work on the CAD? So I had to show them that I could draw on the computer and list the commands and this and that and whatever. But that was their hiring factor, is that I was one of the few that actually knew the difference between nominal and actual lumber size. So that was interesting. But I learned so much from that first design firm that I worked with, even to things that I didn't learn when I was in school, right? So there's just what you learn in school, and you have these projects, and you do the projects and this and that, but it's geared towards just teaching you this foundation, right? So then you get into work and you have this foundation, but then real life happens, and you're having to deal with customers and design changes and making this and making that. So there's a whole bunch of stuff that was just like, crap, this is pretty insane. So that's on that piece. And then you go to computer science. So what's interesting with computer science is that what I learned in my master's, they were teaching program, we were teaching what they taught was C++. And everybody at that time were looking for C#, people who could code in C# language. And C# is pretty much, a lot of houses are doing C# nowadays. So so it's interesting because it's just syntax at that point, right? Or syntax, sorry. So if I know the C language, I just really have to figure out how to do loops and all this stuff in the C#. So you just got to learn that syntax. So but houses didn't, these software development companies didn't. They're like, I don't need a C++ coder. I need a C# code. And so that killed you, right? Because now you're in school and you're like, well, I paid this money for school and I learned this, and you're telling me that I can't utilize that. But really, if you think about it, like literally it is just learning how to do, in C#, but I learned how to do in C++. It's really not that difference. Like any programmer can say, look, I learned this. I can take this knowledge and do Java and C# and all these different other kind of programming languages. I just need to learn the syntax. So,
Yeah.
But that was an interesting thing. So when I had this, going back to your question about the unpaid internship, so I was like, I was in school, I was doing some things, and I was trying to get jobs. So now I already have my bachelor's. So I had a bachelor's degree, but I had no experience. And so I'm going, well, how do I get the experience? And that was my way of doing it, is saying, I don't care. I have the degree, but now I need the experience. I'll sit here and learn for free.
Yeah.
You just give me the knowledge, this on the job training that all these people want. And because I needed to meet both of those requirements. And I think it's still a thing today. We always said, this is huge. Whenever I was looking for the job, I have schooling, but you need experience. Well, how can I get experience? Or if you don't have the degree, then you need a degree. Well, I need both.
Yeah.
And that was the only way. That unpaid internship was the only way I could get both. And I learned so much. And I was only there for probably about 6 months, because then I had to I needed, I still had bills to pay, so I had to find something. But within that 6-month period, with the lead developer and just gaining his knowledge on this real world experience, I learned more with him than I did in my bachelor's. And so it was an amazing thing. And I would encourage, we, with my web development company, we already talked about that. I know there's a lot of people out here. So I know Madeline Costa, she does some work with UCCS, I think, with taking some interns. And so it's just an important aspect to get both of those schooling and on-the-job experience. And so people just can't. I mean, some people can, but that seems to be the huge hang-up for people when they come out of college. Is that's still this thing that people want.
Yeah, and I think it's a very unique thing, because both of us do a lot of personal development, and so it's a unique aspect, because one of the books that I read is The Buddha and the Badass by Vishen Lakhiani. And he was talking that in regards with employees, they did a Harvard study, I believe, and the employees that are most effective are those employees that have overcome challenges and have had the struggle in life before, that really forces them to think differently, pivot, and be able to overcome the challenges. And then they're looking at these people that never had any challenges. You'll have some students that will go through school at a breeze, nothing challenged them and whatnot. They really weren't forced to do anything. And then all of a sudden they get to college and they may freak out because it's not easy like high school was. And so I think that's another thing that we have to look at when you're coming out of college, and maybe you don't have the experience, but maybe you've overcome a lot of different things. And that's where we have to remember, when the students are going through, is they need to look at the challenges that they may have had to deal with and what they did to overcome that, to sell themselves to the employer. But it also comes down to the fact of, is the employer looking at the individual, or are they looking at this individual coming in to fill the bottom line? And so it's one of those very unique things that has to adjust, especially in the time that we are now. I think a lot of different things that employers do are still very old school, and they're missing out on a lot of opportunities. And so I don't know, when you look at that, what your perspective is, because you are doing the coaching piece too, the mindset piece. And I think ultimately that's another thing that people have to realize is you can start a business, you can start a career without having to worry about a degree, because life coaching, I've heard individuals where there's been a coach that's been 20 years old and has worked with individuals. And then I look at the big speakers like Peter Voog, who got into network marketing and did a lot of big speeches, and he's 25 years old and he's getting in front of CEOs and talking. And so it's a very different perspective and ways to look at it, but we still have a lot of people that are set in their ways and don't want to do any of the changing piece. And I tell people changes is a consistent in life. That's the only thing you're ever going to come across. So I don't know what your outlook is on that, because running Webinit, you may have to bring in employees. And so when you're looking at that, what's your idea or what's your philosophy when it comes to somebody that may not have gone through college, and somebody that may have gone through college? What's your outlook? What's your perspective on that?
So so I have partners. So I have two business partners, and we've talked about this at great lengths. So one of my business partners, actually both. So I mean, my sister's one, and then Ryan is the other. And so Ryan he doesn't have a degree at all. He's certified in search engine optimization, so he has certifications, and that's a whole other road, right? Certifications are especially in the computer science field, like the degree is cool, but if you ever look at people who have in the computer science realm, they have a whole other alphabet soup coming after them, and that's their certifications. And so certifications, if you want to look for another avenue outside of college, is if you have the knowledge. So a lot of people are, kids today are programming, they're coding on their own. They just learn it, right? I pick up a book, I want to learn how to do this, or doing websites with HTML, or they learn PHP just because they're streaming and they want a website, so they can't pay someone to do it. So these kids they have a knowledge base today that they could actually go out and get hired based off of just the knowledge that they have. And so we talked about this at great length. This, there are people out there who have more programming knowledge and can code like servers around me, right? And they don't have a degree. So why would I push that type of talent to the side? And that it literally is talent. These people can see things in the coding realm and they have this. I mean, a lot of people will say this, that, people who program, or even those who do drafting, or whatever your field is, you tend to dream in that field, right? You use solutions. And so I'll have coding problems, or I'll dream, and I'm like, oh, and I'll come up with a solution. And I'm like, oh, that's a solution. I'll go and code it, and it works. So, but there are people who can just sit there and their mind works. I mean, so like, the movie The Matrix, this is a great analogy. So, there's that scene where Neo walks up to the guy and he's just sitting there watching the code, and he's like, I see this and see that. He's like, well, all I see is code. Well, there are people who can visually see that code and what it does. And it's just, it's a gift. It's an art form, right? So why would I say just because you don't have a college degree, why would I not give you the chance? As long as you as a person, this is where the mindset part's going to come into that. As long as you as a person is fitting into my company culture or my company brand, and we meld that way, I don't care whether you have a degree or not. I mean, yes, I want you to have a knowledge, but I can give you the knowledge. Just like my first job, right? I can give you what you need. I just want to make sure you at least know the nominal natural size of lumber. That's all I care about. And do you meld with my company? Because the rest is coachable. As long as you're coachable, that's the huge thing, right? And you talked about network marketing, and I am the biggest proponent of network marketing because it does build. I mean, it builds your personal development. It just simply, there's just you have to do it. And all my personal development came from network marketing. Everything who I am today is based off of my upline saying you should read this book because you need personal development, you need personal development, you need personal development. And as I started reading all these books, and I'm going, oh my gosh, there's this whole other type of knowledge that's out there that you do not get in college. You do not get in high school, you do not get in college. There's a whole completely different thing. And knowing what I know now, I probably could have landed many more jobs because now that I work on this, when I go into those interviews now, there's this confidence level and this mindset that I have that it attracts people. Yeah. It's like, wow, this kid, he's got his shit together, right? But that comes from personal development. So people are more apt to take a chance with you when they get that when they're vibing with you, right? We can get into the whole aspect of the law of vibrations and this and that, but just to your question, really that's what you're looking for. Those people that, okay, yes, do you have some knowledge? I'm not going to pull somebody on the street that has zero knowledge of HT, because then I really have to train them. But now, unpaid internship, sure, I'll bring someone in has very maybe limited knowledge, and I could sit there and teach them about this and throw them some certain little things and just build that knowledge. So that's where the unpaid internship really comes into play. And then you develop them as an employee. So it's just that's a beautiful thing. And but just on the other side of that is, as long as you have a little bit of knowledge and you fit my company culture, I will give you a job. Now, that doesn't mean I'm going to turn away the person who has the college degree. Yeah. Because, again, there's the two part. The second part is, are you fitting into my company culture? And so to me, that's where your coaching and the mindset really is a huge thing that people don't know. And life coaches and mindset coaches and all these people, get with them because you will develop a whole different side of who you are that will attract you, and you can basically get any job because you just of what you have up here.
Yep.
So yeah.
So the other thing that I really speak with, and I tell students and families when I'm sitting down and talking to them, is as a student has an idea about what they want to do, I highly suggest having that student go talk to somebody in that career field that can really give them the nitty gritty. It's not what you go search on Google and you get all those good butterfly and rainbows and all that. It's like, no, go talk to somebody so you can get the nitty gritty and you can see what it truly is like. Because it's interesting. We know Chad Nash, who's an electrician, and I was talking to him, and he was saying that his daughter, when it was her senior year of high school, had a friend that all she wanted to do was be a vet tech. And then it was the senior year of high school, Christmas vacation. She went and shadowed and actually saw what a vet tech did. And she's like, oh, I want to love on the animals. I want to care for them. And then when she saw that there was blood in telling with dealing as a vet tech, she's like, I can't do this anymore. And it blew her dreams out of the water because she didn't do that deep dive. And I'm like, oh my goodness. So you spent your whole time and you're a senior in high school and you're getting ready to leave high school and go into the real world. And you finally see what it truly is like. And you're like, oh, I can't do this. So my question, when you look at your experience, do you think you would have gone into engineering and computer science had you talked to somebody and actually seen what it's like with the true career field? Or were you one that's like, nope, this is what I want to do. I'm going to go do it. And if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out.
Right. Well, so for the architectural drafting for that probably it would have suited me more because I loved it, but because the architecture piece, I love houses, and I never wanted to do commercial architecture because I love houses, and I feel sorry for people who invite me to their house for the first time because that's all I do is really look at their house and kind of like break down what the design looks like, and then I pay attention to the people because usually it's typically the house that I go into first, and but I love the houses. Now drawing them wasn't so entertaining. It was I mean, it was okay, right?
Hmm.
There was cool aspects. So the cool aspects that I was really drawn to was the 3D modeling or the artistic aspect of it, but not the scientific parts of it. Not the math and all that. It is what it is, right? You have math
Yeah.
and just about everything you do, but drawing the houses was okay. I mean, it was all right. So I realized, and that's where that flip came, right? So then you go into the computer science piece, and then I love the programming. Like I don't want to say I kind of am a computer geek, right? But I mean, I'm okay with getting out from behind the computer, and I like to sit here and code. But I still like that artsy part, right? And so that's where the web development really spoke to me. And so it took kind of doing both spectrums, right, to find out that there was this middle ground that I wanted to be in, and it still really focuses on the artistic piece. And um, so but if you don't talk to people, you don't necessarily know that there's these different levels, right? And so maybe if I had went into a drafting studio and said, okay, well, let me sit down and watch you do this, I probably would have been bored and probably wanted to do something else. And but the coding piece, I don't think I necessarily need to talk to anybody. But I felt like I picked that up on my own, right? When
Okay.
I was customizing the CAD software and doing those little scripts, I kind of got a taste for it, and so I really sort of understood that. And then we also had in the IT department the chief information officer. He was a programmer, and so I would always pick his brain. So I kind
Oh,
of
okay.
had that, but. So yeah, I mean, it is important. Excuse me. It is important to really kind of get more of an idea, because I think what do people want? Why do you want to be a vet? Like I thought I wanted to be a vet too. Then I realized I would watch an animal die, and
Hmm.
that was just not my thing. Did I want to be a doctor? No, because knew I did not want to go in and be in someone's whatever, wherever a doctor has to go. I knew I did not want to go there. So, but outside of that, we have this vision, this dream of, and almost this delusion of grandeur, right? Of what that job is supposed to look like. But every job has its crap points.
Hmm.
Really, I mean, and it's just honest, right? Because even in computer science, there's this aspect of your programming and blah blah blah, but then you got to deal with deadlines and this and that, and if you hit this bug, you're like, I have no idea what's going on. That's a crap point, and some people really thrive on it, and they like, I just I love that pressure, but some people don't, and so
Yeah.
you have to realize where you stand in that, and so you really kind of have to dig in and definitely talk to people. Long story short, Scott, yes, talk to people.
You know how I like to word the questions, and sometimes we just go down this large tunnel and whatnot, and then we come up and we're like, "Hey, here's the end result and whatnot." So, but it comes into the point too, though. It's asking the questions and just getting people to think and whatnot, and so that's a little bit of the coaching piece too. So,
Right. Well, that's
um,
what I love about coaching, though, is that and this is the other thing, like when you're coming out of college or you're coming out of high school, you don't know what questions to ask. You really don't.
yeah,
Again, like this, if Nash's daughter didn't have that opportunity, she would have never known, because she would have known the questions to ask. Am I going to have to deal with
Mhm.
this poor animal that got mutilated by a car? Now I'm not seeing the whole fluffy lovey thing. I'm seeing this deformed animal with blood all over its fur, right? So, but you don't know to answer that question. You think
Yeah.
that because you love animals, right? And that seems like it's the right avenue to go on. But that's where the coaching piece comes into, and that's where, like, what you do with the high school and beyond stuff is so important, because it brings this more in-depth knowledge of what that looks like,
Yeah.
and helps you to make more of an informed decision. So my oldest, Braden, you talk to him, and for a long time he was wanting to join the military. He was wanting to go to the Air Force Academy. He was wanting to do this. He was wanting to do that. And I'm like, well, cool. Let's go on some things that kind of help you get there. And I think the thing that really got him was we got him into JROTC, and he's like, I don't want this. I don't want this. But I know his thing, because they had, with high school, there's kids that weren't. Braden's an interesting character, but at least he had a taste of something to say, this isn't really where I think I want to go.
Mm-hmm.
And but he thought about maybe still joining the military, but going into medicine. And now he just really wants to do medicine. So he's really kind of finding that. But it's a good thing, like you were saying, to encourage him to say, we were talking just before we went live of the field he wants to go into is we know somebody, and say maybe we could get you to talk to that person and see what that's all about. Because, again, what you envision may not be what the reality is.
Yep. And I think the other thing that families and students have to realize too is if you're going college route or you're going to start working right out of high school and whatnot, you ultimately have to understand that it's free to change your mind during those 4 years because you're not going to be stuck. But once you go to college and you make that decision, it can be very detrimental. It can be very long and tedious by changing your mind. And one of the sad stats, and I was talking to Jasper last week on this, was when it comes to high school, the high school guidance counselors on average are seeing students about 8 minutes every year. And then now with some of these schools, as large as they are too, it's I've seen it where students are having to wait 2 weeks to talk to the high school guidance counselor. And so it's one of those things that high school guidance counselors, they have a ton on their plate and they don't get paid enough for it. But when you look at it, teachers in general too, though, they've got a lot on their plate and they don't get paid enough. But a lot of them are in there because of the passion to really shape the next generation and to help mold and do what they need to. But honestly, I look at it too, when it comes to the high school realm, we've got to start putting personal development in there. And so I know Patrick and I have talked about creating our own school. And that's one of those things that really needs to be instilled into the students because they're so impressionable. And then the mindset piece to really allow them to overcome and achieve what they really want to achieve. But it's also the matter of the fact of they're worried about impressing their friends. They're worried about impressing everybody else. And then they throw themselves on the back burner. And then ultimately they get left in the dust because they've been so prone to worry about the opinions of others. And so it's a tough piece. But then I look at it too, and it's also what's the home environment like? Because if you got parents that aren't in this realm and aren't working on themselves, it's tough for the kids to really see that. And so it's a unique approach. And it's not easy work, but it's work that has to be done. And like we were talking last night, I was like, man, if I could jump in a time machine and go back to the age of 15 and 16 with the information that I have, oh my goodness, like it would be a game changer and things would be completely different.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting is I actually do the mindset coach, right? So I'm doing the mindset coach piece too, because it's so important. And one of the things of where I really want to go with it, and I haven't really figured out how to make that happen, is to do exactly what you were saying. Not necessarily do a school of my own, but how do I get to those kids and teach them about personal development? Because what you were saying, and this is such an interesting thing because you never know this as a kid because you never have personal development, right? So while we're out there as kids trying to impress our friends and trying to do this and trying to do that, if you could just work on this, work on your personal development, and work on your mind, work on the mindset, you will impress your friends in ways that you could never imagine. And so there's this perfect story. And again, I will talk about my oldest son because he's really involved my youngest one is 2, but not like my oldest. So he's really involved in where I go with the mindset. And so we work out these programs for him, or, these not programs, but these exercises for him on what he wants to do. Right. And so he came, he said, I think this is the person I want to be as I go through high school. And he just listed down all these qualities. I'm like, cool. And so here's your exercises that you can do. And you just work on them. And he was working on them. And so a month later, I think I was telling you this last night, I had a parent-teacher conference with a couple of his teachers, and they're like, we have seen this interesting shift in Braden, right? He used to be not want to talk in class and this and that, and he was very reserved, highly intelligent, but very reserved. It says, but now we see, just in this past month, and it just clicked. In the past month, right when he started doing his own personal development, we've seen him become more social. We've seen him turn into not so much of a follower, but a leader in class. He's coaching more kids. He's being this person, and everything that they were laying out that they've seen him become was everything that he had on his list. And so how important, it is so flippin' important to get the mindset and the personal development in front of these kids, because the successes that they'll have in life moving forward, and like we were saying last night, and that shift happened in a month. You take, once they go through college and they get to be, our age, and Lord knows my age, pushing 50 here, that shift doesn't happen in a month. Well, it can, but more often than not, it takes a lot more, reprogramming of the mind. So that it's always been, when I got into mindset, it's always been part of it to say, how do I get this in front of teenagers and those who are about to go in college and in college, because even in college, and you probably know this more than anybody, is these kids that are in college, they have no idea what they want out of life. Half of them are in college and going in thing because that's what they were pushed to do.
Yep.
Or that's where they were told the money's at. But there's no passion in that field. So they come out of it and there's no desire. So why are they not succeeding in that? Because they really didn't want it to begin with.
Yeah.
And so determining what taking your mindset and saying, what is your passion? Really, what is it that you want to do? And there's exercises you can do. Coaches says all kinds of exercises to say, let's figure out what your goals are supposed to be in life. We can work on them in 5-year goals, 10-year goals, whatever that looks like. And we can begin to build this roadmap through personal development and mindset that doesn't matter what's on that piece of paper, you can succeed at it. So it's sorry, I got a little soapbox there. It's so important. I couldn't agree with you more that personal development is something that needs to be in high school, definitely.
Yeah. Well, and I wouldn't apologize for getting on the soapbox. It's just one of those things that honestly we're taking the platform, and as we record and people watch this and share it and whatnot, it's stuff that sometimes parents aren't thinking about it. They haven't thought about it because it's not anything that's been part of their life and whatnot. And then they can start looking and saying, well, maybe this is something to incorporate within the family and whatnot. But it's one of those things that we got to use the platform and share what we know, because that's the value that you have to pass on to somebody else. And it's just a matter of people being open and whatnot. So this is one of the big things, because when I don't know if I said it, but I know I taught about business owners, but with families and telling the students, hey, go talk to them. I had a father that's like, man, I haven't thought about that before, of having them go talk to somebody in the career field. And so that's just proof right there that it's outside, that you don't normally think about that. And then the other sad thing, and I think I talked to Jasper on this, so I don't know, things bleed together. So, but I heard a story of this mom and dad were a doctor and lawyer, and the students loved to figure out how things worked, loved using their mind and whatnot, and it talked about becoming an HVAC tech or an electrician. And the parents are like, you won't have a great life by getting into the trades. because they are in that mindset piece and they've been stuck that the only way to have a good life is by being a doctor and lawyer. But if the parents really thought about it, the kid could have gone to trade school, a technical school, apprenticeship, got out with very little debt, and be making a lot of money. Probably more than you could make as a doctor and a lawyer, depending on where you're at in the doctor realm and whatnot. But hearing those type of stories, that's the sad stat that you kind of face and you look at. And part of what I do is trying to help the student make the most informed decision, but having the parents on the same page to support the kid. And I think that's the biggest issue is a lot of times parents don't support the child. They're trying to live vicariously through their kid and pushing them in directions that don't fit them. But it's also the parents may have given up on their own dreams. And now the kids are in that same boat where, oh, don't dream, think realistically. Because like you have these individuals that are gamers. And I think it was, he was either 12 or 13. He won the Fortnite World Championship and he won $3 million. And so, but as parents, they're like, no, we can't have that. Even though you have a lot of colleges now that are starting to create esports teams. And so the shift that's taking place is huge. And you got a lot of kids that are very passionate about gaming. But do they get the support from their parents because of the ideas and the thoughts that the parents have?
Yeah. Well, and I kind of I did fall into that, but not for probably the reasons that you think. So I didn't let my kids really get into gaming until a little bit later, just because, part of my schooling was cybersecurity, and you learn a lot about the kind of people that are out there in those. And so mine was just more of a protective aspect. But now that they're old enough to know, hey, if someone approaches you this way, this is probably what that is. And so now I let them. They stream all the time, and my youngest is, I think I want to program computer games. I'm like, that's cool. Like we can look at that. I was like, but do you know that there's also a big industry of testing games? Because the coding aspect is fun. Like, again, I'm all about the coding. I love it. It's good times, and that could be really cool. Like the things that they can do with that is just out of this world, right? And then to see the end result of what you just did with billions lines of codes, and you see that end result come up on a computer screen, that's very fulfilling. But at the same time, if go to at least he has someone who can do programming, so I can show him the coding that goes behind and see what he says. But if that's what you do, streaming, gaming, but if you don't want to just be a streamer, see if you can get a job testing, because these people who create these games, they have to do a pre-market release, right? Is it going to be successful? Is it something that we really want? And so I don't know if you remember the movie Big. Did you ever see the movie Big with Tom Hanks?
Yep.
Where he got to test all the toys, and that was just like the greatest job ever. So it's the same type of thing, right? There's all these different aspects of these industries that you could even tap into if it's not, if the vet tech isn't something that you want. Well, what other kind of things can you do in that field, in that realm, that has less to do with the blood and this and that? So maybe it's boarding animals, or taking those animals and getting them through physical therapy. So after the blood and guts, now you can do the loving and the hugging on them and nurturing them back to the health. So maybe that's the aspect of the veterinarian part that you really want to get into. So there's so many different aspects to this as well that, again, but if you don't talk to people, like that's again your point. If you don't talk to people, get into their, what goes on, you're never going to know this aspect. So, I'll let my kids, I don't even see them half the time they're here, because then they're streaming games. And my oldest, he has his little Streamlab Twitch account thing that he's doing, and whatever. I mean, if they can make money on it, who am I? Even if you have a job, we have a friend Q who games, right? Then why wouldn't he? It's just another income stream. When he's off of work, he can come and stream his games and make money at it. Why not? Another stream of income. So
Yeah, it's so funny. It's just how we really, as adults, just kind of have to, we got to shift our mindset piece. And that's the biggest thing. And so it's a unique thing that people really have to shake themselves out of whatever's taking place and whatnot. So, but when you look at everything you've gone through, your experience and whatnot, what would be one thing that you may do differently if you could go back in time? What would be something that you'd do differently?
man, I always hate that question because, and I hate to be like this. There's not much that I would do differently because the experiences that I had,
Yep.
right? It's made me who I am. Now, if I could have learned those things earlier, obviously that would be something I would do differently. But how do you say, okay, if I could go back and learn that earlier? Well, you learned it because of the processes that you had to go through,
Yep.
right? So being running away from home and working two full-time jobs at the age of 16 so I can pay rent. And so I was an adult at the age of 16. So maybe not running away from home, but
Yeah.
you know what? The people that I met and the things that I learned from that has given me my drive. And it really has made me understand a lot more. Now that I've done the personal development and I have more of the knowledge of the mindset, and I look backwards and I say, oh, this is, when I was actually pushing myself forward and knowing where my head was at, that was the mindset piece. And then, so connecting all the dots later, I am thankful for the journey because I've experienced so much. So, but I guess if I had to answer that question, it would probably be not running away from home.
Yeah, but I think when we get that question asked, though, too, honestly, we have to look and be like, well, this was just part of the journey. This is what shaped me to be who I am. The only other thing that I really speak to with students and families is if college is the route that you're going to go, ultimately talk to your professors. Talk to your classmates, and if you can start drumming up ideas outside of everything, it's a beautiful thing. But ultimately talk to your professors because they know people that you don't know, and start building those relationships, and then they could potentially help you out when you get ready to graduate and you need that connection. I would say that's probably the one big thing is students just need to take the time to ultimately talk and so I think probably being able to teach students networking skills and get that started early would be a beautiful thing. Now it goes into, I don't know, maybe we talk to Amanda with Homeschool Heroes and maybe create something in regards with the personal development realm and see about trying to get into the schools with it. Because I know I've got a good friend that it's called Stand Up, Stand Out, and it's an anti-bullying program. So why not create a personal development piece that we could bring in? And you've got your degree, I've got a degree, so it's like we could create a course, and instead of like people going through DECA, we create this personal development course and really shift and start changing. So this may be something that we have to talk about offline and see what we can do with it.
Well, that's an interesting thing that just happened recently with Amanda Hennon, for anybody who's listening, because this is actually a good platform for Homeschool Heroes. Is she developed the program, her and her brother did, based off of what COVID's been doing with the school. So, to get more tutoring time and to get teachers to have more face time with their kids, their students, teachers can go onto this platform and essentially say, I teach math, or I teach science, or I teach this. So if your child needs more attention than that, here's my profile, I charge whatever. And so the teachers can have like this side hustle type thing, but still based off of, what their degree is in.
Yep.
So what Amanda has done is she has opened that up to not just teachers now. So what you're saying can actually can happen with Homeschool Heroes, is you can develop the personal development courses and say, this is the course I offer is really important right now. And so if these parents or students decide that's a good idea, there you go. And so, yeah,
we might,
offline.
yeah, we might have to. So, all right, sounds good. So, but yeah, no, it was a great conversation. It's one of those things that when I start talking to people, sometimes it doesn't go down the route that we start with. But ultimately, it's just sharing the experience that I have, the knowledge that I have, and bringing people on and just sharing their experience and being able to go. So, of course, this actually for this podcast, for this live stream, Jasper was the first individual because all the other episodes that I've done, it's been by myself. So this will actually be the first time that we run through Pod Decks. So, and it's a good thing.
You didn't do. I didn't get to watch all the one with Jasper, so you didn't do Pod Decks with her.
No, because she had to get off because they were getting ready to roll out because they were down doing some stuff with Tabal and whatnot. So the interesting thing is there is a deck in here off of the app that's a philosophy deck. And so kind of goes with all this stuff. So I had to laugh and whatnot. And so the first question here is it more important to be respected or liked?
I don't know. I guess I would go with respected, because I've had some people that I didn't necessarily like, but when they talked, I listened because I respected them.
Yeah,
and they gave me direction in life that, they're people I would never hang out with on a personal level because we just weren't there. But they did have wisdom that I respected. So I would say respect.
This is one of those tough things when I look at it, because honestly, I think it starts with the liking aspect that builds into the respect aspect. Because I think, honestly, if you respect somebody, you're not going to fully agree. But if you like somebody and you start building that relationship, it goes into that potential where if you've got to do something and you build that relationship, people are going to come along with you. And then ultimately you can go from being liked and building that where somebody truly respects you because of that relationship that you built. So it's one of these things that it depends on how you look at it.
Yeah, it's a perception. What came first, the chicken or the egg? So do I like you to respect you, or do I respect you and then like you?
Yeah.
And I'll still say that when I say the respect aspect, it's not that I didn't like these people, right? There are just people out there that I would not resonate with on a personal level.
Yeah.
But when it came to taking what they told me as, you should do this is a really good idea, I can respect your thing because I know what you've been through, and I'm not going to go out and sit down and have coffee with you because we just don't really have that much to talk about in that level.
Yeah.
So I guess that's really where I was going from that. And it's not like I hated them. It's not like I spoke badly about them. It's just we were just not there, right?
Yep. So. No, I got it. But I think it's interesting because you start seeing how people think. Yeah. And so you're going to get multiple different answers and whatnot. Yeah. So I know this deck would be perfect with Flip.
Yeah. Well, Flip he'll blow your mind. You ask him, and he'll be like, well, let me break down to you what like actually means and the word result. And he just has all that. Flip he's one of those guys that I like and I respect both. So
yep.
He's a good cat. I like him.
Yep. So the next one is there an absolute way to attain a happy state of mind?
Say that again.
Is there an absolute way to attain a happy state of mind?
Yeah, absolutely.
I look at it because you've talked about it. Ultimately, it's the internal piece, but I think it also comes into regards to what you've been talking about, the abundance versus scarcity. And so that mindset, if you have the abundance mindset, that helps out with the gratitude and being happy. But if you've got the scarcity, your energy and vibration is going a different route, and it doesn't produce a state of happiness. So for me, I look at it as that way. There's things that build up, and you can obtain a state of happiness within your mind. It's just you've got to work on it.
So here's the process. I'll just give you the process, and if you can do it, you'll be happy. So you have to understand how the mind works. So I'll try to make this quick, and I'll give the condensed versions. But you have to understand how the mind works, right? And Scott, you know this very well. So the mind is on a high level separated into two pieces, right? You have your conscious and your subconscious. And so what most people do, and where the unhappiness comes from, is people are focusing on their current position in life or their current results and things that they are not happy about. So what happens is that's your conscious thinking. You're consciously focusing on these things. And then with that conscious thought, it presses down all those thoughts into your subconscious, and your subconscious, where that is where your feelings are generated from. Okay. So as you're focusing on this position that's not great, it's bad, it's terrible, you impress that on your subconscious. Your subconscious is generating these feelings of depression, of anxiety, of all these negative emotions, right? And then those negative emotions, what those do is they produce action. So your body is going to habitually react to the emotions that your subconscious is pushing out there. And so what do you do when you're depressed? You sit on the couch, you binge watch Netflix, you eat a pint of ice cream, whatever. It's not productive. And so now you're doing that, and you're again consciously going, I hate my life. I shouldn't just be sitting here binge watching Netflix. And so what's happening? You got that conscious thought again. So it's impressing your subconscious. So it's this cycle, right? You're just constantly unhappy. So if you want to be happy, you have to take your thoughts and your mind in the conscious part and say, cool, where do I want to be in life? And this is where you flip everything. You say, this is the whole mindset piece. This is the whole foundation of it. You say, I want to be here. This is my goal. To me, this is my ambition. This is where I want to go. And then you focus on that.
Yep.
And so when people talk about being positive, that's the focus. So where's your focus at?
Yep.
When you're focusing on that positive aspect of where the forward thinking, the moving forward in life, your goals, your ambitions, the dreams, all that. So when you think about that, you're impressing that in your subconscious. So what feelings comes from that? Excitement, happiness, joy, gratitude. And so all that begins to give you more actions, and what actions go with all that. You're moving forward. You're going towards your goal, because that's where your feelings and all those emotions are directing that. So you're getting these different results. So then when you're focusing on those new results, those are good results. And so now the cycle happens, but it's pushing you that way.
Yep.
So there's your happiness right there. It will happen every single time you focus, you put your thoughts onto those, you'll be happy.
And I think that also plays into with students in high school having to worry about tests and whatnot, and not worrying about tests, but taking tests. Like, what are they focusing on? Are they focusing on, oh man, I haven't done very well? And then the brain starts looking and finding answers for those questions. And so this is another example here of how it impacts students. College, all that different stuff, being an adult.
Oh, definitely. When your student is sitting there going, I hate math. Well, of course you hate math, because you just told yourself you hated math. Stop telling yourself you hate it. Say, math's not that hard. I get it. It's fine. And the more you tell yourself that, in your body, your mind, see, your subconscious doesn't know. It doesn't know the difference between truth or false, right? It just knows whatever your conscious is feeding it. That's what we're going to do. So when you say, I hate math, I have a test coming up, where's that your anxiety is coming from? Is like, stop telling yourself that you suck at math, you hate math, or whatever. You're like, no, I can do this. I got this. I can figure this out. I can, instead of I hate, I can't, I don't. So stop using those negative terms and use the positive ones, and then you will succeed at math. It is 100% of the time. I guarantee it. Sorry.
And we'll go, this is the last one. We'll go with the last one here. It says, "What book have you read multiple times?"
I've read quite a few books. So I've read Think and Grow Rich probably about three or four times now. And then U Squared. It's easy, so I can read that one forever. But I love U Squared. U Squared is an amazing book. So I've read that quite a few times. Um, I mean, and the list goes on. I have there's a few. So.
For me personally, I haven't. I've read a lot of books, and I haven't gone back and read the books multiple times. But I know the one for me that I speak highly of and really tell people you need to check the book out. You need to read it because you'll hear individuals like Napoleon Hill when he was going through the studies and then the book Think and Grow Rich. You've had individuals that speak about reading Think and Grow Rich multiple times, reading it once a year, just because people have to understand that as you read, your mind starts expanding, and your mind's like a plastic bag. Once you stretch it, it's not going to go back. And so when you go read another book that you read once already, you're gonna start seeing things that were there, but when you read it the first time, your brain wasn't ready for it. And so it's that personal development, reading, all that fun stuff. But honestly, the one book that I look at, and it will be one that constantly going back every year and rereading it, is The Buddha and the Badass by Vishen Lakhiani, because there's so much in there, different exercises that can benefit individuals, young individuals. If you're getting ready and you're in a section of a job that maybe you're not the CEO, but you can become a leader within that section and make changes that can be very huge. But that's one of the books that would be read multiple times. But I've also had another book that John Gordon had written called the One Word, and so that's something that you read every year towards the end of the year before you head into the new year, and you start figuring out what that one word that you want to focus on for that upcoming year. But it goes into the focus piece. What you focus on expands, and so it's funny when you start looking and you start connecting things, and you're like, okay, yep, here we go.
Yeah, no, you referenced Buddha and the Badass a lot, so I'm picking that up this week, so I'll be reading that one, and then I can share in your that that philosophy and everything that you always talk about, because as highly as you talk about it, it's something that I feel like is probably a really good read. So I'll be reading that.
Yeah, no, and that it comes into play too that for students in high school, read both fiction and nonfiction. You want to read the fiction because it has your brain that gets activated in a different way. And then, of course, read the nonfiction, get into the personal development, read the different autobiographies, because there was an individual that we had, myself and Patrick had interviewed, Jason Alexander, that runs Ocean Connection. And one book that really stuck out was the autobiography of Steve Jobs. And so it's one of those things that, honestly, if you want to cut down your learning curve, these books that have been written are the experience of somebody that you can take 25 years of this person's experience and cut down your learning curve very quickly. So like I said, with the stuff that I know now, if I could go back in time in high school with this, man, things would be different. But you know what? I can't change it. I'm where I'm at now because of the journey and choices that were made. And so just grow, progress, and do big things.
And just to add to that again, and I'll say this too, because those who say they hate math and people who tell yourself I hate to read, stop telling yourself you hate to read. Just read. And you literally are, how I always refer to it as you're collapsing time. You're taking all this knowledge. And that's what's so cool about Think and Grow Rich, and why it's such a huge thing even today, is Napoleon Hill had interviewed 500 of these people who had massive parts of success. Yep. And scientifically went through it and said, how did you get that? And then put all of that research into this book that you can read in about a week. I mean, literally. And so you just collapsed all that time and learned all that information in a week, and
Yeah.
go for it. And that's the beauty of books. It's just like you said. It's you're taking what people have studied all their life for, and you're getting all the best parts of, all the things, the good parts that they learned out of it. And so you're literally collapsing time and
Yeah.
on your forward movement.
Yep. No. So, man, appreciate it, Dr. G. Garrett, jumping on here. I know we were talking about it yesterday, and then just decided, hey, let's just do it tomorrow. I know I've got a couple other individuals. I've spoken to Kristen McDonald. That's kind of going the route of helping students kind of figure out who they are. And so trying to go that route. So that's somebody that I want to bring on and have that perspective. And then, of course, we know quite a few people that are in the trades with different things, and bringing them on just to share their perspective and show that there's many different ways to do things. And like I said, college isn't for everybody. So, and if that makes you mad, don't be mad at me. It's the truth. Like, college isn't for everybody. And if your student isn't meant to go to college, don't force them into that box, because they're not going to be happy. And they're not going to be productive. And you'll have an individual that is like, man, this sucks. And so it's more of trying to help the students figure out what's going to be best for them as an individual. But it also comes into regards knowing that every choice you make has consequences, good or bad, we don't know. But every choice you make is going to have some sort of reaction with it. But that also comes into the mindset piece where, you may think it's going to have a bad consequence, but if you think about it, there's things that can come out of it that can be a good thing.
Yeah. I think, you should, we talk about doing these classes and stuff for kids, but there should be one for parents too, because there are ways. And Jasper always, she tries to talk to me about this, and she says this is probably one of my stronger points, is talking to parents about how to deal with their kids on that. Because like you said, when you force somebody to doing that, you're not helping them at all.
Yeah.
You're pushing them to be depressed and unhappy.
Yep.
And so listen, so that's an important piece with parents, is that we always think we know best, but you don't. Because your kid is not you, right?
Yeah.
So you have to listen to the likes and wants of your child. And so
Yep.
it's just, but again, and we say this all the time, it's an internal thing and it's your mind piece. Those two things have to be in coherence, right? They have to meld. They have to be awesome, or everything else around you is going to be bad. So yeah, but Scott, I appreciate you having me on. It was fun. This is probably one of the best interviews that I had, because that I felt passionate about. So it was good. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you taking up the time. And then for anybody that's watching this on the replay, go ahead and share it. Anybody that you know that could benefit from this, share it. Because ultimately, the value that's in this, there's a lot of value. It has to be shared. And so ultimately, people that are watching this, if you know somebody that can benefit from this, hit the little button to share it and send it to the person. It's on our YouTube channel, Two Native Sons. Twitch is a little bit different because you record and then you don't go back and you don't see it's all live streamed and whatnot. But ultimately, the more we can get out with the information and share it, the better off we're going to be as a society. And ultimately, we got to remember that for change to occur, we've got to be the change. And so starting with the young generation,
you have to understand that the world's changing, whether you like it or not. It's changing. We're going to go to a place that we're never going to be, that there's going to be a new normal. And so the old way of doing things is just not the way of doing things anymore. So change, it's very important. So yeah, definitely, especially this, because the new generations, they're going to have to deal with it. So they need this podcast more than us grown folks. But so if you can share it, Scott does amazing work with the kids in this. So I fully support sharing of this podcast.
Appreciate it. So yeah, other than that, we'll catch you guys later. I'll have the next episode next week. Who will be on with me? I don't know, so I gotta reach out and whatnot. It might just be myself. So other than that, we'll catch you guys later. Appreciate you guys your time and just checking it out.